How do you put in backstory without making it a really boring flashback? How do you write interesting secondary characters? And most of all, why can't I write and why am I too afraid to submit? Those are some of the questions that have come up on the channel recently that I want to answer here in this video. And I'm going to do it kind of rapid fire so that you get the answers, you can move on and get back to your book. Marjorie Scott 2032 says, I'm trying to write the first line very last after I have finished the book because my hope is that I can tie in the first line with the last somehow. Haven't succeeded yet, but that is my goal. That is an excellent writing technique. It's one I used all the time in college. When I wrote a college essay or a paper, I would echo the very first line with the last line. Because when you create a circular story like that, the reader retains it a little bit better because they have that echo of what they heard before. So if you can have your first and last line echo each other, it's a great technique to make the book more memorable. Her question was, do you have any tips on putting in a backstory without doing a flashback? I hate flashbacks. And I hear you, I hate flashbacks too. For me, what happens when you do a flashback is the entire plot grinds to a halt and then goes backwards. And you're just like, wait, what? I was here, now I'm here. It's really distracting and really hard for the reader because a plot is a lot like a road trip. And when you do a flashback, it's like you did a detour and you turned around and you're like, wait, where we want to go is over here. Why are we back here? So how do you put in backstory without doing a flashback? A couple of tips. Number one, people don't tend to dwell on their history. We tend to have little snippets that pop up as we're doing other action because the action, here's the key, the action has triggered the thought of the backstory. Then the backstory feels more natural. In real life, every memory and every backstory moment that you have is triggered. We don't just randomly think about stuff. You see a butterfly and you think about the mom that loved butterflies, or you hear a certain song and you think about that person you used to date. All of our memories are triggered. And the same thing should happen for your characters, because if the reader says, why are they just randomly thinking about this? It's going to be jarring. It's going to take the reader out of the book. So you don't want to do that. We also don't dwell too long. Most of us do not sit there and think for 30, 40, 50 minutes about our past. So work a backstory moment in with action. You've got to study how it's done well. Look at books that do it really well and look at the concentration of action, dialogue, and backstory. And you will see that there's a really good mix in between there. Dragon Moon 1598 said, I've noticed many side characters in a story have one distinguishing personality trait, and that's it. It's that the key to having a strong side character. Only one specific trait that you make as the forefront of their personality and nothing else. The answer is yes and no. Secondary characters serve as what's called foils. I don't know if you remember that from high school literature class, but a foil is the opposite of the main character. They're there to basically balance out the main character. Just like in real life, we have friends that balance us out, or hopefully you did. You could be a hermit living in a cave and not have any of that, but unlikely. So when you look at the secondary characters, you want to think about what role do they serve in the main character's life? Are they the one that is going to bring the humor to the situation? Are they the one that's going to be the wisdom of the situation? I always have one character that has wisdom in every book, and I always have one character that's really funny because I want to have even the darkest book have a little bit of humor in it, so you can balance out the dark with the light. So when you create a secondary character, you want to look at what the role of the secondary character is, how they're going to balance out the book, and how they're going to balance out the story. And that's how you create the traits that you want them to have. They won't have just one trait, but they will have one main trait because that is the kind of weight that they bring to the book. Four-Wall Holiday wrote in a post, I wanted to use an M dash, but now that's considered AI writing. My English professor taught me to use the M dash over the ellipses. Oh well, RIP. I'm not sure why AI is so heavy on the M dash, but I personally love an M dash and I will continue to use them. What about when do you use an M dash and when do you use an ellipsis? Well, an ellipses is for a thought trailing off. Like if you start thinking about something and then your mind goes to something else, your thought will trail off. And that's what the ellipses are used to show. Or when somebody kind of slowly stops speaking, you use that in dialogue. An M dash is for when a thought is interrupted. Listen, just do what makes you feel good. If you love M dashes, use them. If you love ellipses, use them. Just try not to use any of it too much. You don't want to distract from the reading experience. And the things that are unique punctuation, like exclamation points, question marks, M dashes, ellipses, all of those kind of distract the reader a little bit. So if you had 100 M dashes on a page or 20 exclamation points, people would be like, wow, this is really kind of weird and it's really pulling me out of the story. So use it, but use it sparingly. Zorlacan J8051 wrote, I've not submitted anything in almost 6 months or so. I've lost my mojo. I write like I'm going to submit, but I haven't. Something is holding me back. I know exactly how you feel because I go through those periods all the time. And there's one of two things I think going wrong here. The most common is fear. Before I actually sold my first book, I had a huge fear of failure. I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. This is going to suck. Nobody's going to want it. There's plenty of crap going on inside your writer head. Believe me. You have to feel the fear and write anyway. I got a t-shirt that says that. The second thing that could be going wrong is that your gut is telling you something. Maybe there's not enough emotional layers in the book. Maybe there's just not enough there for the plot. Maybe it's just not ready for prime time. I just went through this with a book that I submitted and sold to HarperCollins. I sold it on proposal, which is the first 3 chapters. My editor, however, had some revisions. And at first I was like, what? My baby's ugly? What do you mean it's ugly? It still needs work. Then I took a deep breath and I stepped back and I said, oh, it does need work. It needed more. And all of a sudden I found myself layering in a whole lot more things because I could see that the book needed more of a plot, more emotion, more suspense. And so I started laying all those things in and rewriting the proposal. Sometimes you need either an outside eye or to just take a couple weeks away from the book and look back at it. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Once you get the words on the page, you can work with them. They don't have to be perfect. B. Lynn had a really great comment about this little side story I had. I talked about how I've fallen down the stairs at my parents' house as an adult, like 3 times, like full on down the entire flight of stairs. And B. Lynn said that maybe one of the risers was a little bit higher or lower than it should have been, so my brain missed the step. The great thing that B. Lynn added in, which I thought is a great little nugget for a book, was that some houses have that designed in, and once you get used to it, it's not a big deal. But for someone chasing you in your home, it may give you an opportunity to get away that correctly spaced stairs do not. Now, this is what I'm talking about when you look for ideas for books. These are the little details that you should just file away in the back of your brain because they're really interesting and they can make for a great little plot twist. Maury Sish, and hopefully I'm saying that right, wrote, "People don't expect to pick up and play an instrument for the first time well enough to perform on stage. They know that the skill requires practice. Writing is no different. It requires practice, and practice is nothing more than a whole lot of repetition. It is recognizing a mistake and trying again. People expect to be a natural talent, and if you're a natural storyteller, then you should be able to write a book amazingly well the first time out. That is not how it works for any of us. And if some writer is saying, oh, I wrote my first draft and I published it and I didn't have to do any revisions, I'm sorry, but they are BSing you. It is not true. All of us go through this prospect of layering and adding and subtracting and putting this in and scratching our head and going crazy and pulling our hair out thinking there's no way I'm going to finish this book. This is the worst book I've ever written, because writing is never perfect the first time, and the only way you get good at it is continuing to do it. And maybe like hosting a channel like this one. So you talk about the writing and then you remind yourself, oh yeah, I shouldn't put all that backstory in there. These are the questions that you guys had. They were fantastic questions. I appreciate them. Drop any other questions down below. And in the meantime, if you want to see me tear apart a first chapter and talk about every single element in it and why it exists, check out this video right here.